Good afternoon, folks. I'm Long Beach Mayor Rex Richardson. Thanks for joining us for our weekly live stream where we provide updates on our local homelessness emergency. Today, I'll be talking with Teresa Chandler, our Deputy City Manager. Teresa is here today to discuss the impacts of trauma on those experiencing homelessness and those who support them and the mental health system. Teresa, thanks for joining us today. And to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the role that you play here in the city of Long Beach.
Great, thank you for having me
Sure.
today. My name is Teresa Chandler, and I have been working with the city of Long Beach for a little over 8 years. I started my career with the city in the health department, and I'm a public health professional by trade. While at health, I oversaw the homeless services, youth and family programming, and our violence prevention efforts, including trauma-informed services. About 4 years ago, our city manager saw the need to have someone who could look at homelessness citywide. So that's when I moved into the city manager's office as a deputy city manager. I focus on supporting efforts in addressing homelessness, the Office of Equity, violence prevention, youth and family initiatives, and education.
All very important things.
Yeah, so the crux of my job is really to look at where we can do better as a city to support under-resourced communities and help everyone in our city thrive.
That's incredible. So, and I remember all the time, all the things you've taken on. It's crazy to know that you've only been here 8 years.
Yeah.
And I remember when you first started. That's great. You've just had such an impact on our community.
Thank
So
you.
right now we're having a local homelessness emergency, and you've been sort of the czar in the city manager's office over homelessness in the last 4 years. So tell us about your role more specifically with the homeless emergency.
Sure. So when our city proclaimed homelessness as a local emergency in January, I just built on the work that I've been doing as part of the leadership and policy team. But I'm now serving as co-incident commander with Kelly Colopy, our health director, and we are proceeding as such.
Good. And, you know, I know that both housed and unhoused people carry trauma with them. Mm-hmm. And this is a topic that is not new, but we're learning how to talk about it a little bit differently. And this can create barriers for people who need support. And so how do we see this playing out as it relates to our work on homelessness?
Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm actually really happy to be having this discussion with you today. When a person experiences strong, frequent, or prolonged traumatic experiences, such as physical or emotional abuse, ongoing neglect, are living with a caregiver who abuses substances or is living with a mental illness, has exposure to violence in the home or in the community, or the built-up burdens of family economic hardship, it can have a profound negative effects on the person's mind and body. These events cause what's known as a stress response. So it's been known to disrupt the development of the brain as well as other systems in the body, leading to what is considered toxic levels of stress. So in the 90s, there was a landmark study which found that adverse childhood events, otherwise known as ACEs, impacted people's health and wellness as adults. So the study found that the more ACEs you experience as a child, the greater the impacts later in life.
Interesting.
So additionally, many people are not provided with the support they need to overcome those challenging situations, right? So without the tools to respond, many turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms such as use of drugs or alcohol, self-harm, or social isolation. Many of our community members who are experiencing homelessness have likely experienced multiple traumatic events in their life. At least 1/5 of those interviewed in the past homeless count shared that they had experienced child abuse or neglect as well. So if they haven't, becoming homeless is certainly traumatic enough in itself, and it's pretty complex to disentangle.
So, you know, someone experiencing homelessness or dealing with, having a bad situation in their life right now, it could have been complicated by something that happened many, many years ago.
Yes.
And that just makes it even more complicated to be able to connect with and help some individuals when you put that lens of trauma on there. So how do we, as a city team, how does our community support our unhoused community with their trauma?
Very good question. So as I mentioned, trauma is really complicated, and unfortunately, there's not one solution that will help every person who is struggling. But the biggest thing in recovering from trauma is having a sense of safety. When people have experienced severe or persistent trauma, their nervous system operates in a fight or flight mode on an ongoing basis with limited moments of peace. Okay, so when people are in this elevated space, the first thing that needs to happen is they need to feel physically and emotionally safe.
Right.
As you can imagine, it's really hard to feel safe when you're unhoused, right?
Right.
So Long Beach is really fortunate to have many great community-based organizations and our city's Homeless Services Bureau who work day in and day out to try to reduce the impact of trauma on our unhoused community. So the Multi-Service Center offers drop-in therapy sessions, field-based clinicians who will meet clients out on the street, and they even have evening telehealth sessions so that clients have a safe place to process their trauma in a healthy way.
And we've taken steps in recent years to talk more about localizing mental health and a lot of that support. And I think about our homeless services team and all the frontline workers as well, who are doing incredible work, more than we've seen ever in the history of our city, in terms of outreach workers and case managers, public works and parks team, our library staff. And we know that there's been challenges there with the evolving role of libraries. And I wonder if they experience trauma in their work. So how would you respond to that? How should we think about that?
Yes, absolutely. So persistent trauma not only impacts our community members and clients, but it also really impacts our service providers, as you said, our systems and the built environment. So our frontline workers have a really, really tough job.
Yeah.
People in the helping profession in general, as we care for people, we often don't realize how much of what we are being exposed to is being taken in and held in our own bodies as well. So this is called secondary or vicarious trauma.
So you can pass it on.
Yes, exactly. So it's really important that people in these positions practice self-care and do what they need to take care of themselves, both at work and while away from work.
That's right.
It's also really important, though, that our systems are trauma-informed and are set up to support our staff doing this work as well. So it's not just on the staff member, but it's also on us. The systems and organizations have the potential to either mitigate or exacerbate the effects of trauma exposure for the employees and service providers. So the way in which frontline workers hold, process, and manage trauma will in turn have an impact on the experiences of clients and how we serve the community, right? So when we take care of our staff on the front line, we are helping them better take care of the most vulnerable in our community.
That's right. I get it. I mean, when, let's say you're a teacher and you're having a bad day, maybe the kids are going to have a bad day. Let's say you're a librarian and you're dealing with something at home or some trauma. That's going to impact the way you show up for a library patron. And so as we do this work and this stress and drama compounds on us, this trauma and drama, as it compounds on us, we have to be mindful of the environment we have as a city to support the workers that are doing this incredible work. So with all that said, what can the city do to help support people experiencing trauma?
Great question. That's a great question. So it's really important that we support our staff with the potential vicarious and secondary trauma, as you said. So in homeless services, they actually have a mental health coordinator whose role is not only to support clients with their trauma, but to also provide a space for staff to process what comes up for them while doing this work. This is a model that could be replicated in other departments with frontline workers as well.
Nice.
From a systems level, there's also a need to build a structure and cultivate a trauma-informed response environment from the top down. This requires looking at the city's policies and practices when it comes to supporting and managing staff and evaluating through a trauma-informed lens. And we can keep talking about that. Staff need opportunities to process and rejuvenate. They need safe spaces to retreat after being out in the field.
That's right.
Staff need opportunities to learn from each other and experts who are also in this work. They need ongoing learning opportunities to grow their own expertise with service provision and working with people who have experienced high levels of trauma. And they also need ongoing support from the leadership across the organization.
So it's our responsibility as leaders, mayors, city manager, our entire city team, top to bottom and across the organization, to make sure that we are understanding and embodying those principles around trauma-informed work for all of our city workers. Frontline folks dealing with individuals experiencing mental health challenges, homelessness, but also our police officers or firefighters who deal with a lot of trauma. So that's something that if we want to be a well-run city that really thinks about quality of life, we have to think about the involving nature of the work and how we make sure that people who are doing this work are taken care of. We're concerned about their well-being. So as I mentioned earlier, addressing mental health and substance use could make a significant difference in how we develop a trauma-informed system of care for our housed and our unhoused neighbors. So can you talk a little bit about the service system that can help support mental health needs here in the city of Long Beach.
Yes, absolutely. So we know that addressing our own mental health is critical in regards to our overall health and well-being, right? So as a city, we have studied, and you've talked about many times, we've learned a lot about the connection between the prevalence of mental health conditions and homelessness, public safety, educational attainment, and economic success, right? It's all interwoven.
All connected.
So in November of 2021, Long Beach City Council directed the city manager to work with the health department and local mental health agencies to explore the feasibility of establishing a more robust mental health service infrastructure.
That was my mission.
Right, in collaboration with LA County, right? So the health department went into action, as you know, by convening and facilitating a planning process to develop recommendations for a more robust mental health system in Long Beach. So after convening the advisory group and engaging with the consultant, they have identified and laid out the 4 focus areas of strategies for localizing the mental health system within its scope of control and authority. So these focus areas are mental health treatment capacity, prevention, access to treatment, and focusing on specific populations like youth or older adults. Okay? So we're so fortunate to have our own health department, as you talk about all of the time, and that allows for us to dive in to addressing the needs for people here in Long Beach, and we're continuing to seek opportunities and resources to do just that. So it's a very exciting opportunity too.
That's big. We're fortunate to have a deputy city manager whose job is really to just understand this evolving structure of city government. And you know, all the work that we're doing to learn about mental health isn't something traditionally cities do, but I think we're well equipped as a city with a public health department, with smart people like Teresa, working to make sure that we make this transition the right way. So it's clear that we need to continue to build a more robust mental health system here in the city of Long Beach, not only for those experiencing homelessness, but for all of our residents and all the people that we serve. So Teresa, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this because you dropped a lot of gems, dropped a lot of jewels in this live stream. And I want to thank all of you for joining us once again. Now we'll proceed with interpretation in Spanish and Khmer. Thank you.
Buenos días a todos. Gracias por unirse a nosotros para nuestra transmisión en directo semanal, donde proporcionamos actualizaciones sobre emergencia en el campo de los indigentes. El alcalde de Long Beach, Rex Richardson, estuvo acompañado por Teresa Chandler, subgerente de la ciudad de Long Beach. Teresa está aquí para discutir los impactos del trauma en las personas sin hogar, los que los apoyan y el sistema de salud mental. Muchos de los miembros de nuestra comunidad que se encuentran en la situación sin hogar probablemente han experimentado múltiples acontecimientos traumáticos en su vida. Al menos una quinta parte de las personas entrevistadas en el último reencuentro declararon haber sufrido abusos o abandono infantil. Sin las herramientas para responder a estos acontecimientos traumáticos, muchos recurren a mecanismos de afrontamiento poco saludables como el consumo de drogas, alcohol, las autolesiones o aislamiento social. Si no lo han hecho, quedarse sin hogar ya es bastante traumático por sí. Long Beach tiene la suerte de contar con muchas organizaciones comunitarias y con la Oficina de Servicios para Personas Indigentes de la ciudad que trabajan día tras día para intentar reducir el impacto de trauma en nuestra comunidad de personas sin hogar. El Centro de Servicios Múltiples ofrece sesiones de terapia sin cita previa, médicos de campo que se reúnen con los clientes en la calle y sesiones nocturnas de telesalud para los clientes que tengan un lugar seguro donde procesar su trauma de forma saludable. El trauma persistente no solo afecta a los miembros de nuestra comunidad y a nuestros clientes, sino también a los proveedores de servicios, los sistemas y el entorno construido. Nuestros trabajadores de primera línea tienen un trabajo realmente difícil. En los servicios para personas indigentes, tienen un coordinador de salud mental cuya función no solo es ayudar a los clientes con sus traumas, sino también proporcionar un espacio para que las personas puedan procesar lo que les surge mientras realizan este trabajo. Abandonar nuestra propia salud mental es fundamental. Abordar nuestra propia salud mental es fundamental para nuestra salud y bienestar en general. Como ciudad, hemos establecido y aprendido mucho acerca de la conexión entre la prevalencia de las condiciones de salud mental y falta de vivienda, la seguridad pública, los logros educativos y el éxito económico. En noviembre del 2021, el Consejo Municipal de Long Beach ordenó al administrador municipal que trabajara con el Departamento de Salud y las agencias locales de salud mental para explorar la viabilidad de establecer una infraestructura de servicios de salud mental más sólida en colaboración con el Condado de Los Ángeles. El Departamento de Salud pasó entonces a la acción, convocando y facilitando un proceso de planificación para desarrollar recomendaciones para un sistema de salud mental más sólido en Long Beach. Tras convocar a un grupo asesor y contratar a un consultor, se han identificado y establecido 4 áreas de interés y estrategias para localizar el sistema de salud dentro de un ámbito de social y autoridad. Estas áreas son la capacidad de tratamiento de la salud mental, la prevención, el acceso al tratamiento y la atención a poblaciones específicas. Somos muy afortunados de tener nuestro propio departamento de salud, como el alcalde dice todo el tiempo, y eso nos permite sumergirnos en el tratamiento de las necesidades de las personas aquí en Long Beach. Y seguimos buscando oportunidades y recursos para hacer precisamente eso. Gracias por acompañarnos.
Vàសូមជម្រាបសួរបងប្អូនទាំងអស់គ្នាដែលកំពុងតាមដានស្ដាប់ការផ្សាយបន្តផ្ទាល់នៃកម្មវិធីផ្សាយរៀបរាប់អំពីព័ត៌មានថ្មីៗចុងក្រោយអំពីដំណោះស្រាយទៅនឹងបញ្ហាអនាថនៅទីក្រុង Long Beach របស់យើងថ្ងៃនេះលោកអភិបាលក្រុង Long Beach លោក Richardson មានភ្ញៀវម្នាក់គឺអ្នកស្រី Teresa Chandler ដែលជាអនុប្រធានផ្នែកគ្រប់គ្រងទីក្រុង Long Beach របស់យើងអ្នកស្រី Teresa មានវត្តមាននៅទីនេះដើម្បីមកជម្រាបជូនបងប្អូនអំពីផលប៉ះពាល់នៃស្លាកស្នាមនៃជំងឺបាក់ស្បាតផ្លូវចិត្តដែលមានចំពោះបងប្អូនដែលរស់នៅក្នុងស្ថានភាពអនាថាបញ្ហានេះក៏ប៉ះពាល់ផងដែរដល់អ្នកដែលការពារឬក៏ជួយជំនួយដល់ពួកគាត់ហើយប៉ះពាល់ដល់ប្រព័ន្ធសុខភាពផ្លូវចិត្តរបស់យើងទាំងមូលមានបងប្អូនសហគមន៍ជាច្រើនដែលកំពុងទៅរស់នៅក្នុងស្ថានភាពអនាថាដែលពួកគាត់ទំនងជាជួបប្រឈមទៅនឹងបញ្ហាឬក៏រឿងរ៉ាវជាច្រើននៅក្នុងឆាកជីវិតរបស់ពួកគាត់ដែលធ្វើឲ្យពួកគាត់បាក់ស្បាតផ្លូវចិត្តបើយ៉ាងហោចណាស់នៅក្នុងចំណោមអ្នកដែលយើងបានសម្ភាសកាលពីយើងចុះរាប់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋអនាថាមានបងប្អូនយើង 25% ដែលធ្លាប់ឆ្លងកាត់ការធ្វើបាបឬក៏ការដែលគេប្រងើយកន្តើយមិនអើពើបើគ្មានយន្តការឬក៏វិធានការណាមួយដើម្បីឆ្លើយតបទៅនឹងរឿងរ៉ាវដែលប៉ះពាល់ដល់បញ្ហាបាក់ស្បាតផ្លូវចិត្តនេះទេនោះបងប្អូនជាច្រើនត្រូវបង្ខំចិត្តរកយន្តការដោះស្រាយបញ្ហាតាមតែបែបរៀងៗខ្លួនដែលមិនសូវសមស្របតាមក្បួនវិទ្យាសាស្ត្រទេដូចជាការប្រើថ្នាំញៀនឬគ្រឿងស្រវឹងការធ្វើបាបខ្លួនឯងឬក៏ការផ្ដាច់ខ្លួនឲ្យឯកោឆ្ងាយពីសង្គមជាដើមបើទោះបីជាពួកគាត់មិនមានការជ្រើសរើសវិធីដើម្បីដោះស្រាយបញ្ហាក៏ប៉ុន្តែកាលណាតែពួកគាត់ធ្លាក់ខ្លួនជាជនអនាថាបញ្ហានេះតែមួយមុខក៏វាคล้ายទៅជារឿងបាក់ស្បាតផ្លូវចិត្តនឹងក្នុងជីវិតរបស់ពួកគាត់ក្រាស់ក្រែលណាស់ទៅហើយទីក្រុង Long Beach មានភ័ព្វវាសនាណាស់ដែលមានអង្គការសហគមន៍ជាច្រើននិងល្អៗនិងមានការិយាល័យសេវាជនអនាថារបស់សាលាក្រុងផ្ទាល់តែម្ដងដែលបំពេញការងារនេះជារៀងរាល់ថ្ងៃដើម្បីកាត់បន្ថយផលប៉ះពាល់នៃជំងឺបាក់ស្បាតនៅក្នុងចំណោមបងប្អូនដែលរស់នៅក្នុងស្ថានភាពដែលគ្មានទ្រនំច្រកកោន មជ្ឈមណ្ឌលពហុភាសាសំទុំមជ្ឈមណ្ឌលពហុសេវាផ្ដល់ជូននៅវគ្គព្យាបាលជំងឺផ្លូវចិត្តចល័តនិងមានមន្ត្រីវិទ្យាសាស្ត្រតាមជំនាញដែលនឹងជួបអតិថិជនដោយផ្ទាល់នៅតាមផ្លូវនិងផ្ដល់សេវាប្រឹក្សាផ្លូវចិត្តតាមរយៈទំនាក់ទំនងពីចម្ងាយដើម្បីឲ្យអតិថិជនមានកន្លែងសុវត្ថិភាពមួយនៅក្នុងការផ្សះផ្សាជំងឺបាក់ស្បាតនេះទៅតាមមធ្យោបាយល្អប្រសើរដើម្បីសុខភាពរបស់ពួកគាត់បញ្ហានៃជំងឺបាក់ស្បាតដែលបន្តតែកើតមានជាប្រចាំមិនត្រឹមតែប៉ះពាល់ដល់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋសហគមន៍យើងនិងអតិថិជនរបស់យើងតែមួយមុខប៉ុណ្ណោះទេក៏ប៉ុន្តែវាប៉ះពាល់ផងដែរដល់អ្នកដែលផ្ដល់សេវារបស់យើងដល់ប្រព័ន្ធរបស់យើងនិងដល់បរិយាកាសជុំវិញយើងនោះផងបុគ្គលនៅឯខ្សែត្រៀមជួរមុខរបស់យើងមានកិច្ចការដ៏លំបាកលំបិនជាច្រើនដែលត្រូវធ្វើជុំវិញផ្នែកសេវាអជនអនាថានេះគឺពួកគាត់បានមានមន្ត្រីសម្របសម្រួលផ្នែកជំងឺផ្លូវចិត្តដែលមានទូនាទីមិនត្រឹមតែជួយអតិថិជនដែលមានជំងឺបាក់ស្បាតប៉ុណ្ណោះទេក៏ប៉ុន្តែពួកគាត់ក៏ផ្ដល់ជាកន្លែងសម្រាប់បុគ្គលិកដើម្បីឲ្យពួកគាត់វាតម្លៃថាតើពួកគាត់នឹងប្រឈមបញ្ហាអ្វីខ្លះនៅក្នុងការបំពេញការងារជួយជនអនាថាសប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃនោះការដោះស្រាយបញ្ហាសុខភាពផ្លូវចិត្តរបស់យើងគឺមានសារៈសំខាន់បំផុតនៅក្នុងការដែលយើងបំពេញឲ្យវាពាក់ព័ន្ធនឹងបញ្ហាសុខភាពនិងសុខុមាលភាពជាទូទៅរបស់ទីក្រុងរបស់យើងបាទនៅក្នុងនាមសាលាក្រុងយើងបានសិក្សានិងយល់ដឹងច្រើនអំពីភាពពាក់ព័ន្ធគ្នារវាងការកើតបញ្ហាជំងឺផ្លូវចិត្តបញ្ហានៃភាពអនាថាសុវត្ថិភាពសាធារណៈការទទួលបានការអប់រំនិងភាពជោគជ័យផ្នែកសេដ្ឋកិច្ចទាំងអស់នេះគឺវាមានភាពពាក់ព័ន្ធគ្នាកាលពីខែវិច្ឆិកាឆ្នាំ2021ក្រុមប្រឹក្សាក្រុងឡុងប៊ិចបានបង្គាប់ឲ្យអ្នកគ្រប់គ្រងទីក្រុងធ្វើការជាមួយនឹងនាយកដ្ឋានសុខាភិបាលនិងផ្នែកខាងទីភ្នាក់ងារសុខភាពផ្លូវចិត្តនៅមូលដ្ឋានទាំងឡាយដើម្បីស្វែងរកលទ្ធភាពនៅក្នុងការបង្កើតហេដ្ឋារចនាសម្ព័ន្ធផ្ដល់សេវាសុខភាពផ្លូវចិត្តឲ្យកាន់តែស្វាហាប់និងមាំទាំជាងនេះដោយត្រូវសហការគ្នាជាមួយនឹងតំបន់ Los Angelesជាលទ្ធផលនាយកដ្ឋានសុខាភិបាលបានចាត់វិធានការដែលចាប់ផ្ដើមនឹងសម្របសម្រួលដំណើរការរៀបចំផែនការអភិវឌ្ឍអនុសាសន៍សម្រាប់ឲ្យមានប្រព័ន្ធសុខាភិបាលដែលស្វាហាប់និងរឹងមាំជាងនេះនៅទីក្រុងឡុងប៊ិចរបស់យើងក្រោយការចាប់ផ្ដើមក្រុមប្រឹក្សានេះគឺមានក្រុមប្រឹក្សាមួយនឹងបានជួបពិគ្រោះជាមួយនឹងអ្នកពិគ្រោះយោបល់ពួកគាត់ក៏បានកំណត់និងដាក់ចេញនៅផ្នែកដែលត្រូវយកចិត្តទុកដាក់ជាគោលដៅនិងយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រសម្រាប់កែតម្រង់ប្រព័ន្ធសុខភាពផ្លូវចិត្តឲ្យនៅគៀកកិតនឹងមូលដ្ឋានដើម្បីងាយស្រួលគ្រប់គ្រងនិងបញ្ជាដោយខ្លួនឯងបានផងបាទផ្អែកឬក៏ផ្នែកជាគោលដៅនៃការយកចិត្តទុកដាក់ទាំងនេះគឺជាសមត្ថភាពព្យាបាលជំងឺផ្លូវចិត្តនិងកិច្ចការបង្ការជាលទ្ធភាពទទួលបានការព្យាបាលនិងការផ្ដោតការយកចិត្តទុកដាក់ទៅលើក្រុមប្រជាពលរដ្ឋដែលត្រូវការជំនួយជាក់លាក់ទាំងនេះបាទយើងមានភ័ព្វវាសនាផងដែរដែលមាននាយកដ្ឋានសុខាភិបាលផ្ទាល់ខ្លួនរបស់យើងដោយសារតែប្រការនេះហើយគឺយើងអាចដោះស្រាយទៅតាមតម្រូវការចាំបាច់របស់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋនៅក្នុងក្រុងរបស់យើងជាមួយគ្នានេះយើងនៅតែបន្តស្វែងរកឱកាសនិងធនធានដើម្បីសម្រេចកិច្ចការរបស់យើងឲ្យបានជោគជ័យបន្តទៅទៀតនៅពេលខាងមុខបាទយើងខ្ញុំសូមអរគុណបងប្អូនដែលបានត្រង់ត្រាប់ស្ដាប់ការផ្សាយបន្តផ្ទាល់នៃការទស្សនាការផ្សាយបន្តផ្ទាល់យើងប្រចាំសប្តាហ៍បាទសូមអរគុណនិងសូមជម្រាបលា